Hello everybody and welcome back to the 4th episode now of Kaiju Customs. And this time we're going to be customizing the long-awaited Lunatics. Woohoo! So one thing to note, throughout this video you'll see this little candy toy Lunatics sitting on the table. And I basically just use this as a reference because I've had it for many years now. And I just wanted to make sure that I got the most accuracy out of this Lunatics custom as I possibly could. So first off, I want to give special thanks to Goji73 for giving me a tip that I should use Geronimon as the base for Lunatics, because originally I was going to use Salamandora as the base for Lunatics, and I was very hesitant to use such a valuable figure to me for Lunatics, which granted, this custom is a very valuable figure to me now, but I'm much happier that I now know that Geronimon ended up being the better choice, so I want to give special thanks to Goji73 for that tip. So yeah, like I said, Geronimon was the base, and then we also used a Showa Gomora figure for the legs. This is a specific detail some of you might overlook, but Geronimon's feet have 5 toes, as well as some fur on the bottom, and Gomora's feet have only 3 toes and no fur, obviously. And Gomora's feet much more closely resemble Lunatics. Lunatics has no fur on his ankles, and he only has 3 toes that slightly protrude outward. But Geronimon's arms do much more resemble Lunatics with the slight little fur circle around his wrist. So first off, as you're seeing right now, I cut off all of the feathers and little fins and such on Geronimon's back, tail, and head, just using an X-Acto knife. And then I used some epoxy clay sculpt to shape Lunatics' chest and legs and arms, and used a wet toothpick to carve out his pecs on his chest, as well as the brick-like pattern almost on his arms and legs. Once all that had been done, I used another toothpick to hold up the head of Geronimon, which I had also split the jaw on that a little bit so that Lunatics' mouth would be slightly open. And then I molded some clay around that, and that helped to keep the head steady while the clay was drying. And in addition, I also put some clay on the bottom of the jaw, since there was no bottom of the jaw after cutting Geronimon's little beard thing off. And so after the first day of sculpting, this is what we wound up with. Next, I used the same Tyrant figure that I used in my Nova Customs video, if you remember that, where I cut off his scythe so violently for Nova's scythe, and now I cut off Tyrant's main horn on its head, and also 2 of these spikes on its back that would be used for Lunatics' mandibles, so to say, but I eventually ended up scrapping those. Then I sculpted around the rest of Lunatics' face, and used some more clay to create Lunatics' little fang at the center of his mouth. And then the most frustrating part about this custom, Lunatics' ears. So making one of these that looked accurate to the Lunatics suit was hard enough, but then you have to make 2 identical ones. And they're not exactly identical, the 2 that I came up with, but they're close enough, because I ended up spending about, I'd say like 2 hours trying to perfect the ears. You don't see much of that in this video just because my camera battery kept dying and I didn't want to keep wasting it on you guys watching me sculpt failed ears over and over again, but you see one being sculpted there. And then I made the first attempt at Lunatics' tail, and I went for more how it looked on the candy toy rather than the suit, which ended up looking more like a beaver tail almost. I eventually scrapped it and went for more how the tail is on the suit, which is sort of like this open circle almost. You'll see it later on. Then while I was working on the tail, I molded the ears to the body with a little bit more clay. And that was basically the finished sculpt of Lunatics. After 2 days of working on that, it was then time to sand it. I just took a bit of sandpaper to the head and chest, as those were really the only areas that needed to be sanded in the first place, just because those are the only areas that needed to be smooth. Everything else has that brick pattern going on, and the ears are already pretty smooth, so nothing to be done there. And then it was time for the whole thing to come together with the painting process. Thankfully it was pretty simple. The entire body was painted a tan color, which was used with a bit of flesh tone mixed with gray, sort of the same method used with Femigon's chest, although this is a little bit more desaturated to match Lunatics' actual suit. Now I went over every part of the sculpt with this color, save for the fur on Lunatics' wrists and all of the head and ears and all that junk. The eyes were painted a deep red color, and that was it for those. Then the ears were used with a sort of salmony color almost, I would say. It was made with a vermilion red mixed with quite a bit of white to make that sort of pinkish reddish look that the ears have. Then the inside of the mouth was also painted red at one point, and then I painted the entire face white as well, which the epoxy sculpt that I used was already white, but there were still parts that were showing, and I wanted to make sure that I got the most even look, so to say, for Lunatix's face as possible. And then inside and outside Lunatix's tail, there's sort of a ring of pink and blue going on there. So I just simply made that with the same color used for Lunatix's ears and a cerulean blue. On the face, I don't think I got to show any of this on camera just because, like I said, the battery kept dying. But I used a black Sharpie for the sort of whisker markings almost above Lunatix's mouth, as well as the little rings in the first part of the ears. And then there was a deep yellow that was used for Lunatix's fang and mandibles, and a dark gray that was used for the horn. And then the final step to finish off the figure was the actual fur that I used for the figure. I bought some craft fur off of Amazon, and it came in strips. It was a little bit thick for my liking, which meant that I didn't get to use it for the neck, unfortunately, but I think it looks alright without it there. Yeah, so I basically cut out strips so that they would fit on Lunatix and hot glued them in place, which was very frustrating to say the least, because if they were hot glued in the right place, all of the paint that was in that place would come off, because I needed to get this custom done in time, and I didn't leave myself enough time to let the paint completely dry before trying to do that. Although it probably would have came off anyway, knowing my luck. And that finishes off Lunatix. One of my all-time favorite Ultra Kaiju, one of my all-time favorite Kaiju in general. And for a while I had been looking for the X Plus figure of Lunatix on Mandarake and eBay and such, and I only found one that was $500. And I considered it was the worst part of all that, but I decided against it, and that was for the better, I would say, because now I have this pretty cool custom of Lunatix right here, complete with articulation still in the arms and legs, which you wouldn't get out of an X Plus figure. And there are a little bit of inaccuracies with the figure, such as the tail's a little off, and the ears could be a little better, and the fur kind of turned out iffy, but that was probably the best that we were going to get with the circumstances here. But yeah, I think this custom turned out pretty well. Probably the best custom that I've done thus far out of the 4 that we've done in Kaiju Customs. Well, 5 if you count Damaga, since he wasn't in the video. But yeah, that's it for this video. Leave me feedback in the comments if you want, and I'll see you here Friday for the 4th preview of Zone Fighter Season 2. I'll see you guys then.